Hello, my name is Tom Wright. I am a volunteer producer at CTN, the cable access television station in Ann Arbor. I have had the honor of working with them for over 10 years. They are now celebrating 50 years of serving our community. Today we are introducing the Ann Arbor Public Schools CMPP Magnet Program videos for broadcast on CTN after a brief hiatus. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Jean, Jean, Simons, Simons.
The marriage of Donald Frederick Simons and Jean Boyk produced two sons. Donald Lester was born in 1943 and brother Harold Eugene in 1946. The brothers attended Jones Elementary and Tappan Junior High before graduating from Ann Arbor High School. Both lettered in football, basketball, track, and golf. They both graduated from Eastern Michigan University, Don in 1967 and Harold in 1969. Don was an honor student and was a member of the Kappa Delta Pi National Honorary Society in Education. Harold completed his master's degree in 1971 and was captain of the basketball team. Don became a special and physical education teacher. He worked 40 years with incarcerated youth at Maxie Boys School in Boysville. Don is founder and president of Inbounds Inc., which started in 1989, the mission being that of character enhancement for youth. His visionary concept of teaching them golf skills and lifetime core values is mirrored in the First Tee International Golf Program for Youth, which was founded in 1997. Don is one of the co-founders of the Old Neighborhood Annual Picnic. He married Caroline Boyce in 1968 and they had 3 children, Donna, Elena, and Donald Eugene, and 5 grandchildren. Don's beloved wife and son are deceased. Harold became an instructor in physical education along with coaching basketball and golf at EMU for 11 years. He went on to teach physical education as well as coach basketball and golf at Huron High School for 25 plus years. He has the distinction of being inducted into the Athletic Hall of Fame at Pioneer High, Huron High, and Eastern Michigan University. Harold married Ethel Snyder in 1967. They have 3 children, Bermesia, Devon, and Duan, and 10 grandchildren. Donald F. Simons was captain of the Ann Arbor High School tennis team in 1938. His brother Duan was captain of the Ann Arbor High School swimming team. The Simons family has had a positive influence on the Ann Arbor Ypsilanti community as well as on the state and national level.
The great-grandma lived with us for 12 years, and she was the most beautiful lady that ever walked. The man that built the houses, his son went to school with my son, and my son was asked by the father, Spaley, if he would help with his son. He did, and when he was through, he says, "You pick out where you want to live and I'll build you a house." So my husband and I and all went down to the autumn lean where the big red barn is, and we stood there, and it was just a small path with a tree. And my son said, "I want my house to be right up there on that hill." And then I started taking a lot of nursing classes, but I was way ahead of the classes that I was taking. Just generally, I had sense enough to realize things that they were teaching you that I knew should be done. So I never counted those in. I had enough family to take care of when they were ill than to go out. I had no intentions of making a living by nursing. I've nursed family and friends. That's a part of me. I don't care what you do as long as you can see. I have a magnifying glass. You can scream if you want to, nobody can hear you.
What is my legacy? Do I have a legacy? I didn't start out to be a teacher. My mentor said, this will be perfect for you. Imagine being 14, 15 years old, not a lot of support. And how do you get through school, but also give your child a solid beginning? And I did have an administrator who said to me once, you think it's important to help these young women, but you need to know that there are people in this country and in this state who believe that if they are pregnant, they don't deserve all these services because they shouldn't have gotten pregnant in the first place. In fact, I can remember talking to a woman who said, oh, our young girls have to quit high school. And they said, well, many of them, the families believe that you just, you're pregnant, you have the baby, and you become a mother. School is no longer important. In high school, when I was in high school, Roe versus Wade was illegal. So some young women disappeared. I had a young lady once who flew to England to get an abortion because she had passed whatever the rules were here. That's someone that has means. People were concerned about young women in high school not graduating from high school if they became pregnant. How do you make a change? How do you impact change? We worked on daycare, and we had a grant for several years where young women could bring their children to school, put them in daycare, and then they can go to classes and not have to worry about their child. I taught a course, and we called it Lab for Effective Living, and I taught for some of the young people at that time didn't know about reading to their children or playing games or how to do some things. How do you budget your time, your finances? So I became a teacher of all of those areas. I spent some time in delivery rooms waiting with young women who didn't have anyone with them. And many of them said that was the difference of them finishing high school or even going on to college. And if you don't tell the history, nobody knows.
Welcome to WRAF's award-winning Night Call, Detroit's longest-running phone-in talk show with Peter Wervey.
Oh, what I remember about elementary school is hating it. Because a friend of mine said the purpose of school is to kick the animal out of you. The classes were like tombs. I flunked the 8th grade. I see this as one of the best things that happened to me. I got kicked out of high school when I was 17 or 18 for disciplinary reasons. My parents were decidedly unhappy, and they found out about this program up in Big Rapids at what now is Ferris State University. So I went up there and I finished high school, so I said, yeah, this is great, this college atmosphere of learning and not having this repressive discipline nature of the high schools really made me interested in learning. Well, going to Michigan State had a really dramatic effect on me. Once I got to college and I realized that I didn't need to be rebellious, I could actually go to class when I wanted. And all of a sudden I realized that all my dislike for authority and distrust of it and for constituted and received knowledge actually had a coherent body of intellectual thought behind it. So I became immersed. When my wife and I got married in 1963 and we came back here, the idea was I would become a lawyer, and began working with a publication called the Fifth Estate, then newspaper, which began in 1965. So I was always interested in political ideas and putting them out there. At one point, the program director of WRIF Radio in Detroit said he wanted some youth-oriented programming and came to the Fifth Estate. So I did a phone-in show. And at one point they needed a music DJ, and I thought, cool, this is great, because I loved the music of the times, and I was stuck there for 4 or 5 hours making every mistake under the sun that a DJ could make. Working for the Fifth Estate mainly has been an ethical imperative for me. I've lived a privileged life, being a middle-class white male, and it's that privilege is always based on the backs of other people. And I think I owe back. And I don't do it out of guilt. I do it out of a sense of responsibility to other people and to the planet. But in the process, it's made for, I think, a very interesting and enjoyable life. It's defined my life, I guess you'd say. I hate equivocation. It's defined my life, yeah. Most people think history began 2 or 3 weeks ago. My experience was we chose to be involved in it, not by so-called rioting, but by covering it for the Fifth Estate. Again, we had the privilege, the racial privilege and class privilege here of inserting ourselves into what was a pretty chaotic and violent scene at our choosing. I mean, at first we left the city because we think, whoa, this is getting too crazy. And then we came back in, and as journalists, we're all through the so-called riot areas, and then at the end left for Maine, which the people that most affected by it, the people of color, didn't have the opportunity. And twice I had guardsmen point weapons of war, M1 Garands, at me and essentially threatened me. But so we said, all right, well, let's go over and interview the National Guard. So we went over to Central High School in Detroit, where I had gone to high school, and we rolled up there, and this guy, it was all chain link fenced off, and the guy with an M1 Garand says, yeah, and I said, we're reporters, we have credentials, let me see him. So we held him out, and he raised his gun, and he said, I know your fucking paper. Get out of here. I'll blow your fucking head off. And I just put the car in reverse. Didn't even say anything. Just put the car in reverse. And Harvey said, "What the hell was that?" I mean, he was shaking so badly. I mean, I had a little more experience in the area than he did. During the rebellion, the National Guard gratuitously tear gassed the Fifth Estate office. They blew a tear gas grenade through the offices, and I remember, and I recount this actually very accurately. I opened the door, and then I had an automatic closer. It closed, and I thought someone had hit me from behind. I mean, I just wound up on the floor, and then I realized that I was breathing in something noxious, and I staggered out, fell onto the ground, because the gas that the National Guard was using is not meant to be inside a building. It's meant to disperse crowds outside. But these guys, must have known the Fifth Estate, known it was a rebellious publication, and said, we've got the guns, even though you may have the numbers. I think that universal choices, which is somewhat codified in the philosophy of existentialism, where your individual choices are expanded to universal choices, are very important. And if you're very satisfied with the world as it is, well, maybe then you'll just choose to root for the tigers and the lions. It'd be the extent of your activity. Rebellion against things as they are, to me, is essential for someone who is an ethical person. There is so much exploitation and oppression and destruction of the planet going on. The old saying that if you think things are okay, you haven't been paying attention. It's oftentimes just individual rebellious acts, small acts that we can do each day to rebel against illegitimate authority and oppressive institutions. Or you can become involved in social movements, go to the demonstrations, define yourself as a social activist, which I guess is another way I would define myself. Old people or older people always wish they were young. I don't. What we should almost look for is look for advice from young activists. Okay, that's a wrap.
One of our most ancient instincts as humans is fear. As far back as 100,000 years ago, our hunter-gatherer ancestors had to rely on this primal instinct in order to survive. We had not conquered the earth as our own yet. It still belonged to the wild. But as we have evolved and cut down thousands of miles of forests and hunted hundreds of species to extinction, climbing our way to the top of the food chain, a part of that fear still remains within us. Horror movies are a popular form of entertainment that twists this fight or flight instinct into something consumable for thrill and enjoyment. Sociologist Margie Kerr explains this as a phenomenon called the excitation transfer. Quote, after an accelerated heart rate, heavy breathing, and other physical reactions to fear wear off, viewers experience intense relief. Positive feelings intensify, and, in short, fear floods our brains with feel-good chemicals. End quote. The wearing off of this fear is due to the safe environment that we find ourselves in when experiencing the stimuli. However, we become exposed again when threatening environments that we often see on screen are presented to us in real life. From the darkness of our rooms, fearing the monster under our bed, or at the beach, fearing a murderous great white shark. This fear and these films, by association, can unconsciously control our lives. We as humans paint a self-portrait of ourselves, the prey to monstrous creatures like apes, sharks, and bears. We do this as these very animals fall dead around us by our hand. We are the predators. Instead of sharp teeth or claws, our weapon is misrepresentation, ignorance, and fear. You've seen Jaws and read the seemingly innumerable stories of beautiful surfers losing an arm or leg to a great horrific shark. But in reality, shark attacks are quite uncommon, with only 137 attacks worldwide, only 9 of which were fatal, and the majority of which were provoked when humans harass, try to feed, or hunt the sharks. On the flip side, 100 million sharks are being killed every year due to the hunting of the animal for their fins. An animal that has survived over 400 million years and multiple mass extinctions. Now, out of the 476 species existing, 120 of which are considered at risk for extinction. But the problem doesn't just stay under the surface of the water. On land, animals like gorillas and apes are also experiencing the same difficulties. In the cult classic film King Kong, a gigantic gorilla is seen climbing the Empire State Building and clawing at airplanes in the sky. This image of a large, threatening animal putting humans in great danger is quite the opposite of reality. These apes are very advanced animals who were taught to learn sign language and are also experiencing threats to their population. Bushmeat trade, disease, poaching, and habitat loss are just some of the threats to this animal's population, many of whose species are considered critically endangered. It's time to reanalyze who is the real predator after all. This is Stephanie Preston, a professor of psychology at the University of Michigan. She's done countless research on the scientific effect our brain has to vulnerability. I talked to her specifically about how this vulnerability, especially in animals, affects us, and how we can change this traditional narrative that all less vulnerable-looking animals are bad and harmful. Why are we, as humans, more inclined to save these seemingly more vulnerable animals?
This kind of evolved tendency to need to protect and care for these cute, fragile creatures, we think is like a almost innate predisposition that also gets augmented during, parenting, and the hormones that change during parenting to be even more powerful in those cases.
How do these emotions that we get when we see a more vulnerable-looking animal affect our decision-making skills?
People we find in our experiments and in online donations and charitable giving, they give more money and they want to support charities and they want to save individuals that have these features.
Is there a way we can reprogram how we see less vulnerable animals in order to better conserve more animals who need it?
I really think that knowing more about the species helps. I think these in-person experiences with these animals can really help, and if not in person, in a documentary that shows what's amazing and spectacular and interesting about this animal that they might not know very much about, because I think there are very few animal species that don't have amazing capabilities. Even if they're ones we can't relate to, they can be fascinating. The more you can bring out the life history and ecology of these less familiar animals, I think the better. And even though a lot of people aren't supportive of zoos because they, keep animals housed in environments different from their original one, the zoo done right with enough space and enough enrichment can actually really help bring these animals to people where they are. Like, for example, I don't like snakes. And I probably would never want to give money to a snake. But the the Toledo Zoo actually has, in the Detroit Zoo, they have really amazing reptile houses. And so just seeing the sheer size and amazing beauty of the snakes makes me more inclined to find them interesting and, worthy of help, even though they're the exact opposite of a cute and fuzzy creature.
really good. Thank you. Mwah, 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 mwah.
Thank you for viewing the Ann Arbor Public Schools CMPP Magnet Program videos.